And the winner of the Fields Medal and the cash prize of 15,000 Canadian dollars is Professor Pat.
What to do? Oh, I know.
You should learn how to invest your money better. How? Well, there's many ways.
The value of the gold in 2025 is calculated with this formula, and when we sub in the numbers, we get $126,482.61. The value of the $15,000 from 2006 in 2025 is calculated with this formula, and we sub in the values to get $22,651.10. The value of the $126,482.61 from 2025 to 2006 is calculated by this formula, and the subbed in numbers give $83,759.25. The profit made in terms of 2025 values is $111,482.61. And in 2006 values, it is $68,759.25. So overall, gold is a good investment.
Another option is to save it, where you put money in and earn interest. There's minimal risk, so money won't be lost, but interest rates are very low, so inflation can erode the overall value. Looking at depositing $15,000 into a direct ISA in 2006, you'd have $22,400 by 2025. However, the purchasing power of $15,000 in 2006 is equivalent to $24,000 in 2025, so the value of money in the account will have decreased. Another option is the Roth IRA, a retirement savings account that allows tax-free growth. It has high interest rates of 5 to 10%, so assuming an annual growth rate of 7.5%, you would have $59,000 by 2025. However, you can only withdraw earnings at age 59.5, and if you have had the account for 5 years, or there is a 10% penalty.
Dividends are payments made by companies to their shareholders based on the number of shares they own and are usually paid when a company has excess cash, but not all companies pay dividends. Here, the three glasses represent shareholders. The smaller bowl represents a young company and the larger bowl represents a company in a mature industry. The granola represents the excess cash. Young companies use excess cash to invest in further growth, whereas those in mature industries with stable growth pay quarterly dividends to shareholders.
In 2006, major companies such as Coca-Cola and Johnson & Johnson consistently raised their dividends, and the yields were around 2.5%. In 2008, the financial crisis hit and the S&P fell 50%, and many banks cut dividends. Looking back in 2025, if Tao had invested money into dividend stocks, the value would have increased roughly by 3.4%. However, investing only in dividend stocks limit the growth potential, as the firms which pay out dividends are usually mature and slow-growing.
The bond market is where investors buy and sell debt securities. These are loans made to governments, companies, or other institutions. When you buy a bond, you're lending to an issuer in exchange for regular interest payments and a return on your principal. Typically, bonds are safe investments, but the safest to riskiest type of bonds are government to corporate to junk. However, we see that the yield increases if they become more riskier. For example, government bonds are quite secure, as typically they only fail when governments default on their debts. Corporate bonds are similar, but we see that these corporations issue bonds to raise money for things like expanding operations, paying off older debt, or investing into new projects. A junk bond or high yield bond is a bond that is issued by such corporations with a low credit rating. Whilst a typical corporate bond can return from 3 to 6%, a junk bond can return much more, anywhere between 8 and 12%. But these firms have a higher chance of defaulting. If we were to invest 15,000 Canadian dollars into each of these bonds, it will result in a real return compounded by 19 years of investment in these values.
The first crypto is the Bitcoin, which was created in 2009, and we have calculated that Professor Tao would have made almost 185,000 times benefit in 2025. His man had invested his £15,000 in the Bitcoin in 2009. In general, the price of Bitcoin jumps frequently. In other words, it's very unstable. So in 2009, Tao did not have sufficient information, so it would have been a high-risk investment. As a result, he may not have chosen it.
Property is usually a good thing to invest in. This is a property that you can invest in with 15,000 Canadian dollars. And this is a property that you actually want to invest in. With a bigger budget, we would recommend investing in Canada, since it's one of the most stable countries out there. But with Tao's budget, it's completely pointless.
Do I have to do this up now?
We are using Jenga blocks to represent Tao's $15,000, with each block representing $1,000. To gold, we allocate $2,000. To savings, we allocate $1,000. To Roth IRA, we allocate $7,000. To dividends, we allocate $3,000. To bonds, we allocate $2,000. To crypto, we allocate $0 because of the high risk. And to property, we allocate $0 because it's not worth it. If Tao had followed our guidance, this would have earned him a total of $59,160.57 in 2025.
In the context of 2025 and onwards, we are looking forward to an age of innovation, especially with AI. Moving forward, I think investments into cryptocurrencies will be a part of the investment strategy. In this strategy, we will have a portfolio consisting of 20% gold and silver, then 10% in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum, then 70% in the stock market, where 20% will be invested into high growth tech stocks like Google or Nvidia. And then the final 50% will go into the S&P 500, where the market has averaged around 10%.